Just for a box of chocolate. Yeah. No problem. I don't have chocolate. You don't? I have this plastic thing which is white, so it's not
It's everything here but taste.
I suppose it's around with it and it'll work out. Like the 80s.
Laura, aléjamelo un poquillo porque tiene un puesto muy grande. No sé si aquí arriba que está ahora. Yo me imagino que también Carmen no está la grabadora y el cable. Yo creo que hay opción de grabarlo también. En un momentito voy a buscar yo un sitio donde poner la grabadora. ¿Está grabando ya? Sí. Voy para allá porque yo creo que tiene.
Hello and very welcome on behalf of the network of pan-European radio stations Euronet, and on this very special occasion of the launching of the brand new website that will connect university campus radio stations from all over the block, I would like to welcome you all here today to discuss the first ever interactive debate on youth employment right here in the European Parliament in Brussels. And as this new website will be managed by youth and directed to youth, and considering that getting a job is one of the biggest priorities for young people, we decided to tackle the topic of youth unemployment today in these times of austerity. So in order to do that, we are delighted and honoured to have the EU's top chief for employment and social affairs here with us today, Commissioner Laszlo Andor. Thank you very much for coming along here today. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we will hear some insights from our special guest through a questions and answers panel here on the round table. I would also like to welcome our studio audience who are here from all around the European Union. We look forward to hearing your comments, your opinions, your testimonials, and of course, your questions. And for those of you who couldn't join us here in Brussels today, you can follow us on Facebook or on our website, connect.euronet.eu, and leave your comments obviously there. So let's start with Commissioner Laszlo Andor. To give you a bit of background, he's a Hungarian economist, a holder of a PhD in economics, and since the 10th of February 2010, he has had the position of Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. He has a 5-year mandate as EU's Chief of Employment and is involved in many areas like fighting poverty, guaranteeing a faster and more effective use of EU funds, boosting social dialogue and improving conditions in the workplace. But also on his mandate is a big priority for him, and that's dealing with the critical situation of youth unemployment. So he's an ideal guest to have here today to join in this interactive debate. So Mr. Andor, the floor is yours if you'd like to share some inspiring words with us.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon and speak about the extremely serious topics. Because the crisis of the last 3 years made a very severe impact on society in Europe, but especially the young people. If I need to describe why this crisis was so tough, the rise of youth unemployment is probably the figure which is relevant to cite. Now we have on average 25% of the age group, those under 25, who are not at school or in employment, and this is significantly higher than before the crisis. The rise of youth unemployment was sharper than average unemployment across all age groups. So this is a signal that we need to do a lot more to provide jobs, and especially the first job, the first employment experience for the young people. We practically need to change the model, the practices of employment within the EU, and especially in the countries where youth unemployment is excessively high, more than 1/3 of the age group. There are about 6 countries like that, the Baltic states, Slovakia, now Greece and Ireland is slipping into this group, and you probably know that Spain has the highest youth unemployment rate with about 14%, which is really dramatic. Now, these are the extremes. The good news is that there are some countries on the other end where the youth unemployment is relatively low, and there are definitely some practices, some experience from which we can learn. These good performers are Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, where education, training has performed much better, and also the employment services have been more successful in keeping the young people in employment and bringing them to jobs. So this is the general landscape. It's really a lot of concern about how many young people are out of job, and also for those who are in job, what are the conditions of employment. We need to improve both the number of young people in jobs, but also the employment conditions of those who already found a job.
Well, joining us here as well on the panel this morning are students from the campus radios from all over the European Union. So I'll just present them. Here on the left is Sasha from Bonn in Germany. He's been highly involved with Bonn Campus Radio 96.8 for over 6 months, and he's a technical journalism student. So he has a question for you in just a minute. I'm just going to present from the Universidad de Salamanca in Spain, Guillermo, or William in English, as you like to call yourself too.
Yes, thanks.
Guillermo is studying media and communication at the University of Salamanca, but he's been actually collaborating with the Euronet radio station, Punto Radio, for the last few years. So he'll be asking you a question hopefully a little time in the next few minutes as well. Now we have Andrei from UBB Radio Romania. He's a journalism student and a keen photographer. He's been involved with the UBB Radio for just a month. Do you like it so far?
It's very good.
And our fourth guest here is Matus from, I'm not even going to dare pronounce your second name. How do you pronounce it?
Wodarczyk.
Well, it's not so bad. 21 years old, from Warsaw, living, as you say, in the wonderful capital of Poland. He's a journalism student and looking forward to asking this question as well. First of all, let's start with Sasha from Bonn. What would you like to ask the Commissioner?
All right, thank you for the first opening question. Dear Commissioner, young people have to be very flexible today. Many of them are in an unstable situation, going from one short-term employment to another. Caught in this situation, they cannot make up future plans. And so my question to you is, how can companies be motivated to offer more long-term employment to young people?
Well, indeed, the type of contracts that have been offered to the young people, and not just in the last couple of years, but in the last decade, have not been the best. There has been a tendency, and this is a tendency which we do not only need to understand, but also reverse. There was a tendency to provide more fixed contracts to young people, and it was increasingly difficult in the recent period to have a permanent contract if you are young. And then it pushes up the opportunity of the first permanent contract to the age of 30 or beyond. Why is this a problem? To some extent, flexibility is a good thing. But on the other hand, the problem is that if you don't have a certainty of your employment, you don't have a permanent income, you don't feel material stability, you start your family later, and this is bad not just for starting families, but also having social security in the long run. So there's a lot of negative outcome out of this. Well, the Commission has put forward already last year, and we are now actively advocating it, a different type of contract, which is the single open-ended contract, which starts with a general contract comparable with the level of protection in case of fixed-term contracts. But the point is that without interruption, you would gradually develop this employment contract into the level of protection of the permanent contract. And the point is to eliminate the interruption, which the young people very often experience, and I would add very often experience unnecessarily. And this would, of course, provide the employers with a certain test period test period, I think, is justified because they need to test whether the person is really the right one for the particular job. But if that turns out to be the case, without interruption, they could go forward and continue with a more permanent contract. We are advocating this solution across practically all member states, but especially in countries where the young people have been pushed to fixed-term contracts excessively.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Now, Commissioner Andor, earlier you said that Spain was in fact the country with the highest rate of youth unemployment. So we have here from Salamanca our aspiring journalist Guillermo, who would like to ask you a question about that.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here, the opportunity which means being here in my name, the name of my university, and also the radio station. I want to thank you, Mr. Lasso, to being here attending on our questions. And you were right, we're talking about the high unemployment Spanish rate. My question is directly related with that. According with ADECO's 2010 report, the exodus of young Spanish people who left their countries looking for job opportunities has doubled in the last 2 years. Most of them choose the European Union for immigrating, and they have a common profile. We are young people between 25 and 35 years old and with high level of studies. In fact, the highest level of studies ever had in Spain. We think that the best option for us, for Spain, will be to substitute this void by bringing new young immigrants to fill it. So, answer the question, what should the Spanish market offer to the European high-qualified youngsters to make itself attractive for themselves?
Well, Spain is a country with a very high level of inward but also outward mobility. So it's not only that people from Spain, especially young people, look for jobs in other countries, but Spain also attracts a lot of people, not only from Europe and Eastern Europe, including Romania, which recently joined the EU, but Latin America and other countries find Spain as an attractive point. The problem is that now it's not so attractive because of the very high level of unemployment, and the question is why it is the case. I think it's a multiple failure of many systems in society, starting with the education system, but also the economy that did not experience a very balanced development in the recent decade, but it was excessively focusing on a few industries, like construction, like tourism, which went down with the crisis like a lead balloon. So the question is where Spanish youngsters can look around for jobs. I don't think they should just completely give up on Spain itself, because there has to be, once the country is stabilized also financially, there has to be a restart of economic growth which should offer a job. But indeed, the key point is mobility and learn languages, learn professions that can be better, more competitive across Europe and more applied to the forthcoming cycle of the European economy. Now, in order to find out what jobs, what skills will emerge in the coming period, the Commission is putting forward a few key initiatives, which is the European Vacancy Monitor, which will help people, but especially the young people, to see in the European space how the labour market is moving, in what professions, what jobs are coming up, in what particular regions. We also advocate, together with the responsible Commissioner, Mrs. Vassiliou, the recognition of certificates and diplomas. This is absolutely key, because sometimes if you come from country A, you have difficulties to get a job in country B or C, because your diploma, your certificate is not easily translatable and not necessarily recognized. There is a lot to do in this area, and all countries have to agree that this is in the European interest, and especially in the interest of the young people who are looking for the jobs, to make progress in this respect.
Okay, and on that note, speaking of Spain, we would like to play a clip now from Radio Salamanca that has been prepared especially for today's event. While they're preparing the clip, will you just briefly tell us about the clip?
Spain, 24% of unemployment, 40% of young unemployment.
Spain, 45 million people, 20 million of people working, 1 out of 4 employment.
Spain, 12th rank of GDP,
but 23rd of GDP per capita. Economy based on tourism and brick industry.
Not enough money for research. Therefore, the investigation have to work abroad. How can this be explained? Is Bologna reaching its target of enabling students to access to the job market?
We've been to Brussels in order to find solutions.
We're a million of people that are all the same, and every day it becomes clear that we must continue our education. Today, you have to excel beyond what is required of you and stand out from the rest. We just want enough money to survive, and that means finding a job whenever and however possible.
Well, I'm a student, and nowadays it's harder to find a complementary job. So it's almost impossible to study and work at the same time. And when I finish my studies, the best option is trying to get a public job, working for the government, or something like that.
Radio Universidad, 89.0 FM.
Okay guys, I'm afraid you're going to have to leave the panel and allow our friends from Trinity FM, from Sweden, from Radio Ururu, very strange pronunciation there, and from UNED. So thanks guys for joining us here.